But as you get older, you get a bit of a conscience, and you think about things, and you have to sort of control yourself, you know, and you have to think about what you do.
The first thing that caught my eye was the geezer had a gold tooth. The second, that he was holding a shooter. And the third, that he was pointing it at me. My door work and bodyguard work had taken me deep into gangland, into the dangerous world of the blaggers and the drug dealers, turf wars and terminations. Now somebody was coming to terminate me. With violence all around me for the last 20 years, my battle scars evident for all to see, I was now facing the possibility of an early epitaph on my tombstone. Strangely enough, at that moment in time, as dawn slowly lit up London and I stood facing a gunman beside the River Thames at Battersea, I didn't particularly care. I was fueled up on steroids and speed, a 17-stone man mountain, and I was feeling no pain. The drugs had made me feel invincible. The geezer with the 45 was not a threat, he was the challenge. I found myself shouting at him, "Come on then, you cunt, shoot me!" My safety mechanism had snapped. The little man in my head that comes along when I'm deep in shit and says, "Don't do it, don't be silly now, Carlton," had taken a hike. There was just this lunatic standing there, full of bravado, full of drugs, caution thrown to the wind, saying, "Come on then, kill me!" The black geezer was getting closer. His eyes were wide and glazed. His face was a twisted smile, the gun hand unsteady. He was obviously out of it, probably crack. The smile wasn't because he was pleased to see me. We'd clashed earlier and he was back for revenge. Me and Big Chris and a few other lumps were doing the door at a special boat party, members only, which had been laid on by some rave crowd. The two black geezers had turned up and walked up the gangplank towards the boat. I told them it was invitation only. I could see some of the girls at the party looked scared. These two blokes had given them trouble earlier. I tried to be diplomatic. "Look mate, it's membership only. We've got our capacity on board." The biggest of them muttered something like, "I'm so and so. I go where I want." I said, "I don't give a fuck who you are. You're not welcome." A fight kicked off and I grabbed him by the throat, pulled out a knife and said, "Look mate, we don't want this grief. You've caused the fucking problem. If you don't fuck off, I'm going to drag you behind that tree and cut your fucking throat. How do you want it?" All the boys were on steroids those days and were pumped up and growling at everybody like wild animals. Not a pretty sight. Off the black guys went, muttering dire threats that they'd be back to kill us. We were told they'd be trying to get on the boat parties for a couple of weeks, but kept getting turned away. One was a crack dealer and a heavy cocaine user. Dangerous people, and not to be underestimated. We'd thought they'd got the message, for the assembled heavies, blocking their path, wouldn't give any hassle. How wrong could we be? Half an hour later they were back, but now I knew the main man was called Mr. L. I discovered he had a track record for violence and brutality and headed one of the biggest dealer rings in South London. He was back for vengeance. He stood there for a few seconds smiling at me. Then he unzipped his leather jacket. Before he could pull out a weapon, we were on him. Bang, bang, bang. He was on the floor. I said, "We've warned you. We know who you are. We know how bad you are. So if you come back again, we'll have to kill you." With that, I cut him across the face. A fucking great gash down his cheek. He pushed and pushed. It was 7 in the morning. I'd worked 2 different clubs through the night and I was at my limit. It had to be settled here and now. As I cut him I said, "Right, that's your final warning. Fuck off and keep out the way or you're dead." The combination of tiredness, drugs and rage and anger saw me talking like a psychopath, but I needed this cunt off my back. I'd hoped he'd got the message. Again, I'd read it wrong. The sun was fighting its way through heavy cloud over London at the start of a new day, already marred by aggravation. I'd agreed to do the door at a boat party till 2 a.m. in the morning, and we were starting to relax. I was sitting on the Thames wall talking. A couple of my boys were sitting in a new BMW having a snort of coke off the back of an A to Z when a car pulled up the street about 100 yards away. I saw a black guy wearing a baseball cap with a big sticky plaster slapped across his face, almost comical, as though in a cartoon. Andy said, "It's that black geezer." I said, No, it can't be, can it?" It was, and he was looking for trouble big time now. He walked up the slope towards us, then he pulled out the shooter. The boys started ducking for cover. As he got nearer I could see he was still out of it. He was laughing like he was really enjoying the situation. He was getting nearer, the Browning automatic looking bigger and bigger with each stride. The gold tooth was gleaming. To this day, I don't know what made me do it, but the brave pills kicked in, and I was fronting him up and saying, "Come on you cunt, shoot me." Whether this was sheer stupidity or the ultimate test of my fearlessness, I don't know. I've done a lot of stupid things to test my arsehole, but this was pushing it now. The little devil in my ear saying, do it, do it. Now there was about 15 yards between us. If you want me, you have to kill me, I taunted him. My sense of self-preservation was gone. I pulled out a knife and shouted, come on then, you want some of this? I'm not sure those were the words I really wanted to come out, but the devil was in charge. I was frightened inside. I knew I could die here, but the wrong words kept coming. Come on then, you can't kill me. I wanted the other words in my head, Carlton, fuck off out of here, to prevail, but they didn't. There was a standoff for a few seconds. It seemed like hours. The gun was waving around a bit in his hand, like it was too heavy for him to control, but it was still pointed my way. Then he took a shot at me. Bang. Now everybody was running and screaming. The bullet whizzed past my left ear and thudded into the wooden hull of the boat. I thought, fuck, he's really going to kill me. I knew I had to kill him first. The power of the steroids and the coke made me feel strong again. I could walk through a wall. Then suddenly, I wasn't frightened anymore. I was bouncing a bit by now. I yelled, come on then! He fired another shot. Bang. That went past the other ear. He was running towards me, and the next shot might not miss. I looked for some cover behind a tree. Bang! He took another shot. Then he clocked my car with the 2 doormen in it. He didn't know this was mine, but decided to shoot it anyway. He fired one through the roof and it hit the A to Z with the coke on. It missed Paul by an inch. Rather than waste the gear, Paul closed the book around West Kensington and trapped the powder inside. The gunman put another couple of bullets into my car, and I was working out how many bullets he'd got left. I knew it could only be a few. Was it a 9mm clip with half a dozen or so bullets? Or was it a more modern gun with up to 13 shots? A gamble now could be fatal. If I miscalculated by a single shot, I could become yet another statistic in the underworld's hall of infamy. Now Big Chris was starting to move in on the gunman. The gun was being waved around in all directions. There was no telling where the next shot might go. And if Mr. L was looking for a big target, ex-Marine Chris could be it. 6'4" and 20 stone of well-toned muscle. Chris was working as a fireman and moonlighting as a bouncer, so he didn't need any hassle that might get him sacked by the brigade. As I was thinking he should just fuck off out of it, they were tussling at close range. Another bang and a wisp of smoke. Chris's bomber jacket puffed up from the blast. I thought, shit, he's been hit. He stumbled to the floor. This could be really bad news. The nutter had wounded him, or worse, killed him stone dead. I was working my way towards him from the cover of the trees. I was thinking, gotta get to him, gotta get to help him. Me and a couple of others were ready to charge in. Then we realised Chris was playing possum, pretending he was wounded. As the gunman turned away, Chris lurched up from the ground and grabbed his arm. The shot had ruffled his coat, ripped through his baggies and grazed his leg, but hadn't caused him any serious injury. Relief all around for a few seconds. I ran at them and dived over the car bonnet. Me and Chris wrestled him to the ground. Someone emptied the gun. Then we dragged him down an alleyway nearby, and he knew what revenge was all about. He received a savage beating, more than 20 stab wounds, and was as close to death as possible to be while still breathing. In fact, we thought he was dead. We could hear the sounds of police sirens and a Scotland Yard helicopter. We quickly grabbed up the tools that had been used, knives, coshes and knuckle dusters, and threw them into the Thames. The tide was out, and we saw them sink into the mud, hopefully hidden forever from the yard's finest. We went out on the boat and cleaned ourselves up as the police arrived in force with machine guns and flak jackets. Then we had to get Chris off the plot because of his job. We had to get Paul off because he had a curfew and he shouldn't be there. I couldn't go anywhere anyway because my car was so badly shot up, so I said I'd stay behind with one other doorman and talk to the old Bill and tell them as much as needed to be known. I'd got about $2,000 in door takings in my shot up motor and needed to get them out of the way. The police said, "Is this your car?" I said, yes, and saw the A to Z in my back seat with some Charlie on it. There's a big fucker with a machine gun standing right beside me, so without really thinking, I picked up the book and snorted the gear up my nostrils before the cop had a chance to twig what was happening. That's all I needed. The old Bill found a load of Class A in my motor, on top of the shooting and the wounding. I walked up the gangplank a bit unsteady, and went aboard for about 10 minutes to get my head together and get our story straight from Mr. Plod. No one had seen much anyway because they'd all been hiding, but I told him it was a plain case of self-defence because the bloke had been trying to murder me. I told the cops the gunman got stabbed by someone 100 yards away and was now on the way to hospital. They searched the area and found the gun and the used cartridges. They confiscated my car for forensic testing, and I was taken to the Nick for questioning. Then they came to us and said, "Look lads, we know you've got something to do with this stabbing because you've got specks of blood on your trousers." They said they knew who Mr. L was, a main crack dealer, one of the top boys in London, and then there'd been in a row. He'd come back with a gun to kill us. It was pretty obviously self-defence. I thought at this stage that Mr. L had died. I'd seen him laying there motionless in a river of blood 10 foot long. I didn't think anyone could survive a beating like that. He'd been stabbed up the arse through his back and arms, half his stomach was hanging out, and he'd been beaten to a pulp with knuckle dusters and baseball bats. This was underworld retribution at its most savage. I don't seek to justify it. It happens in the jungle, that is London's underworld, and that was the world I moved in. It'd come to kill us. We tried to kill him. Rough justice. That's the way it was. Who the cops wanted to know could have inflicted such injuries, even on a scumbag crack dealer who probably deserved it. Well, we didn't know, did we? We'd said we were hiding behind trees and bushes, ducking and diving to escape injury, and had only got near to the geezer to disarm him. We didn't see anyone knocking the shit out of him. It must have been another little firm who'd got the hump. The senior officer had clearly guessed the truth. He said, "Look lads, it was obviously self-defence. We're on your side, just make a statement, we can get this all tidied up." We said, "Oh no officer, all we know is some black geezers came and started shooting up the place and we all hid." He didn't believe us, but would never get the evidence for attempted murder charge. As we were about to leave, another cop slided up and said, "If I were you, I'd get rid of all your clothes when you get home." We knew what he was doing. They seemed to be saying that if he died, it would be great no loss to anyone and might save a few lives of the addicts he supplied. Tony Tucker and me were best mates then, and he drove all the way to Southend to pick me up from the Nick. I'd phoned Denny, my girlfriend at the time, on my mobile after the stabbing and told her to ring the solicitors and warn them I might be in trouble. I thought I was looking at a murder rap. Denny had phoned Tony and he was straight in his motor to collect me. That's how good a mate he was. He just dropped everything to help me. The stabbing victim had 5 blood transfusions, dozens of stitches, and spent 2 weeks in intensive care under a 24-hour armed guard. He was eventually charged with firearms offences and sent up to the Old Bailey for trial. They wanted me to be one of the prosecution witnesses. I wasn't happy with that. We had a meeting in a pub the Sunday before the trial, and I told the other boys, "I'm not going." They said, "What? You're being deep shit?" I didn't care, I told them. I wasn't going to court, I said. It's not the done thing in our world. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. I didn't think any of us should go. I decided to bolt up to a secret address out of London while the police were trying to serve a witness summons on me and my home address. Then I heard what his defence was going to be in court. Me and him had a fight at a club door and he'd beaten the fuck out of me. I'd pulled out a knife and stabbed him and then pulled out a gun and shot up my own car in the boat, like you would. It was fucking ludicrous. I thought the geezer was going to play it straight and keep his mouth shut, but instead he was going to slag me off. On the 3rd day of the trial, the cops went to my mum and dad's address, left a message saying if I didn't turn up at the Old Bailey by 3 o'clock that afternoon, they would issue a warrant for my arrest and charge me with the gun offences and the attempted murder of the dealer. I thought then I had to go. It wasn't worth the risk of being done with all the serious shit just for not giving evidence. So I was up there at the Bailey and they were asking me if I hadn't turned up because I'd been threatened. I said no, you just don't do that sort of thing. We have our own code we live by. I was now chief prosecution witness and set for some tough questioning. The defence barrister had apparently applied to drag my violent past out to discredit me, but it hadn't been allowed. So to get round it, his first question was, "Have you ever appeared on television, Mr. Leach?" He'd obviously seen the Hooligans documentary that I'd been in and wanted me to say I'd taken part in it as a self-confessed thug. I replied, "Yes, I've been on the telly, but the stand broke and I fell off." The judge was not amused and he bollocked me for being flippant. The barrister could see he was getting nowhere, so we switched to the night of the gun attack. "You say in your statement, Mr. Leach, that all you could see coming towards you was a black man with a gold tooth." I said, "But most black men have a gold tooth." He turned to the jury and gave them a big wide beaming smile and said, "Members of the jury, you will note that I haven't." I said, "Well, fuck me, you're the first black bloke I've seen without a gold tooth." Everybody started laughing and I got pulled up again by the judge. The barrister suggested that me and Mr. L had been fighting and he'd been beating me. I said, "Look mate, no one would have got that close because anyone gets within a couple of inches, I headbutt them." He'd claimed that I'd pulled the gun out of my car and started to shoot up. "Oh fucking hell, yes you're right," I said. Then I pulled out another gun and John Wayne was there and we just rode past shooting at everyone. That brought me bollocking number 3 from the judge. The jury thought I was a right lunatic. The police were getting the right hump with me. Then the defence barrister said to me, "Is my client the man who shot you?" I said, "No, he's not." He looked startled. "What? What are you saying?" I said, "How can I tell whether it's him or not? It was 7 o'clock in the morning and still half dark. I was dog tired. All black men looked the same to me. All I could see was a pair of white eyes and a gold tooth." The geezer on the dock looked at me in sheer disbelief, and suddenly his barrister was lost for words. "No, that's definitely not him. It's a case of mistaken identity." I added to rub salt into the wound. Not surprisingly, I was dismissed from giving further evidence. As I walked out, Mr. L gave me a half nod. Then the old Bill started giving me a right verbal monstering, and the court refused to pay me any expenses for the day. Mr. L had come back from the dead, and now had walked out on a string of serious charges. My kind of justice. I bumped into him 2 years later, after he'd been back to Manchester to some heavy-duty friends in the drug game, and had returned to London and started hitting the clubs. Everybody was knocking him back out of respect for me, so I said, "No, let him in." I thought that all the time I knew where he was, I was safe from a revenge attack. If I didn't know, he could have hit me at any time, anywhere out of the blue. Then one night I bumped into him in the Aquarium Club in Old Street. He limped over, last in result of his stabbing injuries, and I said, "Right, how do you want to do it? Do you want to finish your hearing now? If you do, I will kill you stone dead. You can end this feud now, call it a day, or one of us will die." To my surprise he said, No, I want to buy you a drink. If it wasn't for you, I'd be doing 10 years. He said his barrister had told him after the trial, "Carlton Leach has saved your bacon, you owe him." So I accepted his truce. There was no point in prolonging that war, and I knew now I wouldn't have to keep looking over my shoulder for a bullet coming my way. So me and a bloke I'd nearly killed, who we'd beaten to within an inch of his life, stood shoulder to shoulder, down in large vodkas like old mates. And I felt better about it. That was our code. We'd settled things our way, honour intact on both sides. Then suddenly a fight kicked off in the club. People were yelling and knives were out. That was my kind of action, and I waded in. To my surprise, Mr. L joined me at my side. From the best of enemies, we were now fighting, side by side, backs to the wall, looking after each other's interests. I got cut trying to stop these two black geezers killing each other. I stepped in and got slashed across the arm. Now we were real blood brothers. He looked across at me and said, "Fucking hell, mate, you don't have to attract trouble." That was true.